Something is happening inside this organization that the rest of the NFL still refuses to admit, and after looking closely at the full schedule, the timing of these matchups, the rest advantages, and the way Sean Payton is preparing this roster, there is a growing belief that the Denver Broncos are quietly being set up for a massive takeover season. While national analysts are busy doubting this team, there are hidden details buried inside this schedule that could completely change the AFC race, and honestly, some of them are almost unbelievable when you break them down carefully. The craziest part? The toughest stretch of the season may actually become the exact reason this team grows stronger than everyone else by December. There are matchup advantages, travel situations, extra rest periods, and emotional revenge games that could push this Broncos squad into another level entirely. And once you hear how everything lines up later in the year, you may start believing this team has a real shot to shock the entire league. But before we go any further, make sure you destroy that like button if you truly believe the Denver Broncos are finally building a championship caliber team again. And I want every optimistic Broncos fan in the comments to write this right now. Go Broncos! 2026 is our comeback season. Now let's get straight into it, because there are some very important things Broncos country needs to understand. A lot of people are focusing only on the difficult opening stretch of the schedule, especially with the season opener against the Kansas City Chiefs. But the deeper you look, the more favorable this becomes for Denver. The Broncos are not dealing with some impossible schedule like many people are pretending. In reality, when you compare overall strength of schedule based on projected wins and last season's numbers, Denver lands right in the middle of the NFL pack. And here's where things get really interesting. The Broncos actually received a positive rest differential this season, meaning they will have more total rest days than many of their opponents throughout the year. That is massive in the NFL. Injuries, fatigue, travel, short weeks, those things decide playoff races more often than people realize. Denver having additional recovery time throughout key moments of the season could become one of the hidden reasons this team stays strong late into the year. The opener against Kansas City is also not nearly as terrifying as some people think. The Chiefs lost important defensive pieces, especially in the secondary, and now Denver gets an early opportunity to attack a defense that is still adjusting. Sean Payton has also quietly built a very strong reputation in primetime games since arriving in Denver. The Broncos have performed extremely well under the lights, and this matchup arrives with almost zero pressure on Denver. All the pressure sits on Kansas City. Then comes the Jacksonville Jaguars game at home, and honestly, this one feels personal. Broncos players clearly have not forgotten what happened last season. Multiple players openly talked about wanting another shot at Jacksonville after that frustrating loss. Playing them early in Denver could be a nightmare for the Jaguars. Traveling into altitude early in the season, before players are fully conditioned, is already difficult enough. Add in the emotional motivation Denver will have, and this suddenly becomes a game where the Broncos could send a message to the entire AFC. And maybe the most overlooked factor of all is Sean Payton himself. Early in the season, Denver faces teams with established coaching staffs instead of brand new systems. That matters because Payton thrives when he has film and tendencies to study. He is one of the best game planners in football when opponents are predictable. According to the discussion inside the report, surprises are often the only thing that can slow him down, and Denver avoids many unknown situations during the opening month. The matchup against the Rams is another game people are overreacting to. Yes, Los Angeles is talented, but there are scheduling details that heavily favor Denver. The Rams come into that game after difficult travel situations and physical matchups. Meanwhile, Bo Nix has quietly developed a reputation for thriving against NFC teams at home. That confidence inside Broncos country keeps growing because every time people doubt him in these situations, he keeps responding. Then the road stretch begins, and this is where team chemistry may become extremely important. There's strong belief Denver could stay on the West Coast during consecutive road games to build camaraderie and maintain momentum. Sean Payton has done similar things before, turning road stretches into bonding experiences that strengthen the locker room. That could matter tremendously once the season gets deeper and tougher. The Chargers matchup might honestly become one of the defining games of the season. Denver knows it needs to finally solve the Justin Herbert problem. But there is optimism because SoFi Stadium rarely feels like a true home field advantage for Los Angeles. Broncos fans consistently flood that stadium with orange jerseys, and this year the Chargers also deal with brutal travel and scheduling disadvantages leading into that matchup. What makes this entire schedule fascinating is how balanced the season becomes after the brutal opening stretch. Denver receives mini byes, extended rest periods, and several strategically placed games against struggling teams later in the year. The bye week timing itself may be one of the biggest gifts possible. Week 10 gives players time to recover exactly when the body starts breaking down from the NFL grind. And then you look toward the closing stretch of the season. Buffalo, New England, Chargers. Those are playoff caliber environments. But Denver gets important rest advantages before several of those games too. The possibility of deciding the AFC West at home late in the season is exactly the kind of scenario Broncos country has been waiting years to experience again. And this is exactly why the second half of the season could become the moment where the entire NFL finally realizes the Denver Broncos are no longer rebuilding, they are arriving. The way this schedule is structured gives Denver an opportunity to survive the early storm and then start dominating once the roster is fully rolling. That is what should scare the rest of the AFC right now. Because if the Broncos come out of that opening stretch healthy and confident, there's a real chance this team catches absolute fire heading into November and December. One thing that keeps standing out is how many opponents Denver faces at the perfect time. Take the Arizona Cardinals matchup for example. The Broncos come into that game after extra rest while Arizona is still trying to figure itself out as a football team. Denver historically handles that matchup well, and this feels like another opportunity for Sean Payton to completely control the game from start to finish. And then comes what may become one of the biggest statements of the entire season, the second matchup against Kansas City. Imagine the atmosphere in Denver for that game. By that point, the Broncos could already have momentum, confidence, and playoff positioning on their side. The belief around the team is already growing that Bo Nix is much closer to competing directly with Patrick Mahomes than people nationally want to admit. There's even discussion surrounding how close Denver already was to beating Kansas City multiple times recently. That confidence matters because mentally this Broncos team no longer looks intimidated. And honestly, that may be the biggest difference compared to previous years. Sean Payton has completely changed the mentality inside the organization. The expectation now is not simply competing hard. The expectation is winning these games. Then you move into Carolina, another matchup Denver should feel extremely confident entering. Sean Payton continues to dominate teams from the NFC South since arriving in Denver, and there is a strong sense that his familiarity with those organizations gives him a huge edge in preparation. But what really changes everything is what happens after the bye week. This is where the Broncos could become terrifying. Coming out of the bye, Denver gets extra preparation time before facing division opponents and teams struggling with quarterback uncertainty. Sean Payton with additional preparation time is something opposing coaches absolutely hate dealing with. Historically, coaches like Payton become even more dangerous after a bye because they have more time to install wrinkles, exploit weaknesses, and completely customize game plans. And the Raiders matchup perfectly represents that advantage. By that point in the season, there's growing belief Las Vegas may already be looking toward the future rather than fighting for contention. Meanwhile, Denver could be playing some of its best football of the entire year. The difference in organizational direction between these two teams is becoming larger every season. Then comes Pittsburgh on the short week, followed by Miami after another extended rest advantage. Again, this is where the schedule quietly becomes incredibly favorable for Denver. The Broncos repeatedly receive additional recovery opportunities before key games late in the season while several opponents enter exhausted stretches. And let's talk about that Miami game for a second because there is a serious emotional angle surrounding it. Denver has every reason to want revenge and redemption after everything connected to